Alex adjusted the worn strap of their guitar case. The cool Memphis air doing little to calm the nervous flutter in their stomach. Today was the day. The open mic night at the Blue Hound was notorious for crushing dreams, but also occasionally for sparking them. Alex wasn't aiming for stardom. They just wanted to share their music, a blend of old-school blues and modern rock, something a little different. As they walked down a narrow alleyway, a shortcut behind the main street, a scrap of newspaper, yellowed and torn, fluttered against their leg. Usually, Alex ignored street litter, but something about the faded headline caught their eye. It wasn't about the Grizzlies or the latest political drama. It was about Elvis's lost years. The Nashville sessions that never were. Alex crouched, pulling the brittle paper closer. The article was old, maybe from the early 80s, talked about a brief, almost forgotten period in Elvis's career. A time when he supposedly experimented with sounds far removed from his usual rock and roll. The author, a long-dead music critic named Vernon Hayes, hinted at something truly wild, something that would have shocked the world. A sonic earthquake, the article called it, a side of the king no one was meant to hear. Alex scoffed. Elvis, a sonic earthquake. Sure, his early stuff was revolutionary, but heavy metal? The article didn't use the term, but it strongly implied something aggressive, dark, and raw. It seemed like pure tabloid fodder, the kind of crazy rumor that clung to legends like dust. Yet a tiny, almost imperceptible seed of curiosity was planted. Alex had grown up in Memphis, surrounded by Elvis's ghost. Graceland was practically a local landmark, a tourist magnet. But Alex had always felt there was more to the king than just the jumpsuits and the Vegas shows. His early music, the raw energy that was the good stuff. What if there was another raw side, one so unexpected it had to be buried? A myth. That's all it is, Alex muttered, tucking the scrap into their guitar case. Almost subconsciously, they shook their head, dismissing the thought. They had a performance to focus on. The Blue Hound was packed. The smell of stale beer and fried food mingled with the hopeful tension of aspiring musicians. Alex found a corner stool tuning their guitar, trying to ignore the constant stream of doubt. After a few lukewarm acts, the host, a grizzled man named Frank, called Alex's name. Taking the small stage, the spotlight felt like a laser beam. Alex took a deep breath, strumming the first chords of their original song, Riverbend Blues. It was a fast, energetic number, driven by a powerful guitar riff and a raspy vocal. Halfway through, something clicked. The fear faded, replaced by the pure joy of making music. Alex closed their eyes, leaning into the notes, pushing the limits of their voice. When the last chord died, the applause was more than polite. It was genuine, enthusiastic. Frank even gave a nod. "Nice one, kid," he mumbled as Alex stepped off stage. "Got some fire in you." Buoyed by the praise, Alex packed up the earlier newspaper scrap, forgotten for a while. But as they walked home, the words of the old article began to echo in their mind again. A sonic earthquake, a side of the king no one was meant to hear. Later that night, unable to sleep, Alex pulled out their old laptop. Google was their usual first stop for everything. Elvis, unreleased recordings. Elvis, dark music. The search results were mostly fan theories, conspiracy sites, and the usual biographical information. Nothing substantial, no definitive proof. Most reputable music sites dismissed any such claims as urban legends, the stuff of fever dreams. Then an obscure forum post from years ago caught their eye. Said it was unlike anything anyone had ever heard from him. Made the '68 comeback sound like a lullaby. Bluesman 77 had only made that one post years ago, and then vanished. It was just another forum whisper, easily dismissed. Yet, coupled with the newspaper scrap, it tickled something deep inside Alex. What if there was even a grain of truth? Alex spent the rest of the night falling down a rabbit hole of Elvis lore, sifting through hundreds of articles, interviews, and documentaries. They looked for anything, any tiny detail that might support the myth. Most of it was noise, but every now and then a small anomaly would pop up. A strange quote from a session musician about Elvis's dark moods, or unusual experiments. A passing mention of a studio booking that didn't seem to align with any known releases. It was all circumstantial, all easily explained away as misremembered anecdotes or creative interpretations. But for Alex, a different picture began to form. Picture of an artist, perhaps constrained by his handlers, yearning to break free, to explore a side of his musical soul that the world never saw. A sonic earthquake that the world wasn't ready for, or perhaps that they didn't want the world to hear. By dawn, Alex's eyes were heavy, but their mind was buzzing. The myth, which had seemed so absurd just hours before, now felt less like a distant fantasy and more like an unsolved mystery. A puzzle begging to be put together. Elvis Presley and a heavy metal album, Alex whispered into the quiet room, the absurdity still present, but now tinged with a strange, undeniable allure. It couldn't be true, could it? And Alex, for the first time in a long time, felt a thrill beyond just playing music. They felt the pull of a quest. The whisper in the alley had become a roar in their thoughts. They were going to dig deeper. They had to. The quest for the mythical Elvis album consumed Alex. Mornings were for college classes, but afternoons and evenings were for digging. The internet had given up its obvious secrets, so Alex turned to the dusty, neglected corners of Memphis. Old record stores, antique shops, and even the local library's forgotten archives became their hunting grounds. Most people scoffed, "Elvis, heavy metal kid, you've been reading too many fanzines." Others just shrugged, their eyes glazed over by years of hearing every Elvis rumor imaginable. Alex was starting to feel a bit crazy, talking about this to anyone who would listen. One sweltering Tuesday, Alex found themselves in Malone's Music Emporium, a place that smelled of ancient mango and wood polish. It was run by an old man with a shock of white hair and a perpetually grumpy expression, known only as Pops. He sat behind a towering counter, surrounded by stacks of Lelp, occasionally grumbling at customers who touched the wrong album. Alex had been there before, mostly to browse for obscure blues records. Today they had a specific purpose. "Pops," Alex began, trying to sound casual. "You've been in the music business a long time, right? Seen a lot of things come and go?" Pops peered over his spectacles, his eyes surprisingly sharp. "Longer than you've been alive, Sprout. What's it to you?" "I've been hearing this rumor," Alex continued, feeling a blush creep up their neck. "About Elvis. Supposedly he recorded something really different. Something heavy." Pops snorted, a sound like an old record skipping. "Heavy Elvis could get heavy, all right. Heavy on the fried peanut butter sandwiches." Alex sighed. "No, I mean musically heavy. Like aggressive, unreleased." Pops leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. He adjusted his glasses, a slow smile spreading across his face. Not a friendly smile, more like a cat watching a mouse. "Ah, the Hammer of Memphis rumor. Heard that one a few times over the decades." Alex's heart did a little leap. The Hammer of Memphis, this was a name Alex hadn't seen anywhere online. It was a proper, almost legendary name for the myth. "So, you've heard about it?" Pops leaned forward again, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "Heard it from the horse's mouth, more or less. Not Elvis himself, mind you, but from people who worked with him, people who saw things." He paused, his gaze fixed on Alex. "Why do you care, kid? It's just a story." Because if it's true, it changes everything," Alex said, suddenly earnest. "It shows a side of him nobody knows. An artist who wasn't afraid to push boundaries even if he couldn't release it. It makes him more than just a legend, you know? It makes him real." Pops watched them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he let out another snort. "Naive but passionate. I like that." Picked up a dusty old cigar box from beneath the counter. "You know, Elvis, The astronaut loved his money more, and his control. Elvis wanted to experiment. He had a powerful voice. Kid commend. Inside were old guitar picks, a few faded photos, and a small, intricately carved wooden music box. He wound it up. A faint, melancholic tune, almost like a blues riff, drifted from it. He was trapped, you see. "Pops," said his voice softer now. "By his image, by the expectations. Sometimes an artist just needs to scream about in those days, but not in public, never in public." Who did he record it with? Where? Alex pressed, trying to keep their voice steady. Pops closed the music box. Details get hazy over time. People forget. Or they choose to forget easier. That way, less trouble. But I did know. A guide, Boomer Jones? Good man. Went on to play with some of the biggest names in rock, but before that, way before, he did a few sessions. Boomer Jones? Alex quickly pulled out their phone, typing the name. Is he still around? Pops grunted. Not impossible. This was the first real lead. A name, a potential witness. Why are you telling me this, Pops? Alex asked, genuinely curious. Pops squinted, a hint of something wistful in his eyes. 'Cause you remind me of someone who believed in the music, not just the money. And because, well, a good story deserves to be heard, doesn't it? Even if it's just a whisper in the wind. He looked at the music box again. Just be careful, kid. Some secrets are buried deep for a reason. And some people don't like old graves being disturbed. Alex felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just a myth anymore. It was a quest, one that had just been given its first tantalizing clue. They thanked Pops profusely, who just waved them off with another grumble. Leaving the musty old shop, the sun felt brighter, the air crisper, the hammer of Memphis. The name itself sent shivers down Alex's spine. It sounded powerful, dangerous, exactly like the kind of music Elvis might have made if he'd truly let go. And Clyde Boomer Jones, he was the next step. Alex just had to find him. The road to Natchez beckoned. The drive to Natchez was long and filled with anticipation. Alex spent the hours listening to every Elvis song they could find, trying to imagine the King's voice over a distorted guitar. Riff. A thunderous drumbeat. It felt both impossible and incredibly exciting. After a few wrong turns down winding country roads, Alex finally pulled up to a small, unassuming farmhouse. Port swing creaked gently in the breeze, and a weathered acoustic guitar leaned against the railing. This had to be it. A thin, elderly man with a kind face and surprisingly lively eyes answered the door. His hair was sparse, but a faint, almost musical rhythm seemed to emanate from him, even when he was just standing still. Mr. Jones? Clyde Boomer Jones? Alex asked, feeling a surge of nervousness. That's me. Who are you? Son or daughter? Alex introduced themselves, explaining their passion for music and the rumor they were chasing. Boomer listened patiently, his eyes never leaving Alex's face. When Alex mentioned the hammer of Memphis and Pops Malone, a flicker of something, perhaps recognition or old pain, crossed Boomer's features. The house was cozy, filled with musical instruments and framed photos of various bands and musicians, many of them legendary. Boomer sat in a worn armchair, motioning for Alex to take the sofa. Pops Malone, huh? Haven't heard that name in ages, Boomer mused, a faraway look in his eyes. He was a good man, always had an ear for the truth, even when it hurt. Alex's heart pounded. This was it. Mr. Jones, about Elvis. Did you ever record anything with him that wasn't released? Something different. Boomer sighed, a long, weary sound. He picked up a framed photo from a nearby table. It was an old black and white picture of a young Elvis, smiling, surrounded by a group of musicians Alex didn't recognize. Boomer pointed to a young man with wild hair and a drumstick in his hand. That's me, back in '67. We were doing some sessions at RCA Studio B in Nashville. Just routine stuff, you know. Standard Elvis fare. He paused, a shadow falling over his face. But then there was a weak, oh strange, was in his heart. But then he was more than restless. He was angry, frustrated, tired of the movies, tired of the image. He wanted to break free. Boomer's voice dropped, almost to a whisper. He came into the studio one day, not with his usual crew, but with a couple of guys I'd never seen before. A guitarist and a bass player. Real wild ones. Kid, not the usual love songs. Kid. These were raw, full of fire and brimstone. He wanted a sound that matched his mood. Heavy metal, Alex breathed, almost afraid to say the words out loud. Boomer nodded. Didn't have a name for it back then. We just called it the noise. Distorted guitars, a bass that rattled your teeth. And drums, well, he wanted the drums to sound like a thunderstorm. And his voice, he used it like a weapon. Growling, screaming, but still that incredible power, that soul. So the hammer of Memphis, Alex whispered, the myth taking shape before their very eyes. That's what the engineers called it when they thought nobody was listening. Boomer confirmed. Colonel Parker wasn't there. He was off doing some movie deal. Elvis had a small window, a moment of freedom. He paid for it all himself, cash out of his own pocket. Didn't want it to go through the usual channels. What happened to the tapes? Alex asked, their voice tight with anticipation. Parker found out, not right away, but eventually. He was furious. Said it would ruin Elvis's image, make him look crazy. Said it would destroy his career. He called it blasphemy, demanded the tapes be handed over, the original masters, the backups, everything. Alex felt a pang of disappointment, a fear that the story would end here. That's what they said. What the colonel wanted everyone to believe, Boomer said, his eyes narrowing slightly. Where? Do you know where Sparky Finch is now? Boomer sighed again. Sparky passed away a few years ago. Lived a quiet life. Never saw him after he left the business. But he was a sentimental guy. Kept everything. He had a number right. Just a tiny place off the grid. He used to talk about it, his little sanctuary. He pointed to the faded photo again. This picture. It's one of the only ones from that week. Elvis always wore his sunglasses, even inside. Said he wanted to be anonymous, just another musician, making music. Alex noticed it then. Elvis, usually so expressive, was wearing dark sunglasses in the photo, a rare occurrence indoors. It was a subtle detail, but it screamed of secrecy, of a desire to hide. Do you remember anything else about that cabin or Sparky's family? Alex asked, their mind racing. Boomer closed his eyes, thinking. He had a daughter, I think. Name was Lisa. She was just a little girl back then. Probably grown with kids of her own. Now, never knew where she ended up, but if anyone knew about Sparky's secrets, it would be her. And as for the cabin, it was near a specific mountain. He called it Whisper Peak. Said the wind sounded like music. There, Alex scribbled down the names. Jimmy, Sparky Finch, Lisa, Whisper Peak. This was more than just a lead. It was a map, a faint one, but a map nonetheless. Boomer Jones had given them not just confirmation, but a direction. Thank you, Mr. Jones, Alex said, genuine gratitude in their voice. This means everything. Boomer just nodded, a small knowing smile playing on his lips. Good luck, kid. Sometimes the most beautiful music is the one that's never heard, but maybe it's time for the world to feel that earthquake. As Alex left Boomer's farmhouse, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the fields. The whisper had turned into a clear voice, leading them deep into the heart of a truly extraordinary mystery. The next stop, the Smoky Mountains and the elusive Whisper Peak, armed with the names Jimmy Sparky Finch and Whisper Peak. Alex started their research for the Smoky Mountains. It wasn't as easy as searching for a person in a major city. Whisper Peak wasn't a prominent landmark on maps, suggesting it was a local name for a smaller, perhaps unnamed mountain. The general area, though, was clear, eastern Tennessee, deep in the Appalachians. Before heading out, Alex went back to Pops Malone. Boomer Jones confirmed it. "Pops!" they exclaimed, brimming with excitement. "The Hammer of Memphis," he said. "An engineer named Sparky Finch made a copy." Pops just nodded, a slight smirk on his face. "Told you he had an ear for the truth." "So, the old rumors hold water, eh? What's your next move, Sherlock?" Alex explained about Sparky Finch's cabin near Whisper Peak and his daughter Lisa. Pops didn't have any more information, but he did offer a word of caution. "The mountains can be tricky, kid. People live their quiet lives for a reason. Don't go barging in, and for crying out loud, bring some proper hiking gear. And maybe a map that doesn't just show tourist traps." Alex took the advice to heart. They spent a few days buying rugged hiking boots, a good backpack, and a detailed topographical map of the eastern Tennessee region. They also contacted a few online communities dedicated to obscure Appalachian history, hoping someone might have heard of a remote cabin belonging to a Sparky Finch or a mountain called Whisper Peak. The response was mostly crickets. One person, however, replied to a general post Alex made about searching for unusual musical history in the region. The user, Mountain Melody, wrote, "Sounds like you're looking for something off the beaten path. I live deep in those woods. Maybe I can help. What kind of music are you into?" Alex cautiously replied, explaining their interest in a specific, unreleased Elvis project. They kept the details vague, not wanting to scare anyone off or reveal too much just yet. Mountain Melody responded quickly. "Elvis, interesting. Never heard of him doing anything heavy out here. But I know a lot of the old-timers in the Forgotten Trails. Meet me at the Lost Creek Diner in Greenbrier, Tuesday at noon." Greenbrier was a tiny blink, and you miss it town nestled in the foothills of the Smokies. Alex felt a mix of hope and apprehension. This could be a breakthrough, or it could be a waste of time. On Tuesday, Alex found the Lost Creek Diner. It was exactly as described. Small, rustic, and filled with the smell of strong coffee and fried eggs. At a corner booth sat a woman, probably in her late 20s, with a striking mop of acoustic guitar case propped beside her. Her eyes, a piercing shade of green, scanned the room. "Mountain Melody?" Alex ventured, approaching her table. She smiled, a warm, genuine smile that instantly put Alex at ease. "That's me. You must be Alex. Pull up a chair. I'm Maya." Maya was a local musician, a joker who played folk and blues in small mountain towns. She knew the area like the back of her hand, having grown up there. Alex explained the full story, from the newspaper scrap to Pops Malone to Boomer Jones, about Sparky Finch and the Hammer of Memphis. Maya listened intently, her expressions shifting from skepticism to curiosity to outright fascination. "Elvis doing heavy metal, man? That's wild," she said, shaking her head in amazement. "My grandpa actually knew a lot of the old session guys back in Nashville. He was a roadie for a bit. Never mentioned anything like that, but he was always saying Elvis had a fire in his belly that the public never saw." "Do you know anything about a Sparky Finch or a mountain called Whisper Peak?" Alex asked, showing her the notes they'd made. Maya frowned, thinking, "It's not on any official maps. Do you think he's the same Sparky Finch?" Alex's voice was hopeful. "Could be," Maya mused. "There aren't many Finches up in these parts, especially not ones who were engineers, and the description of him being a recluse fits the old-timers. Said he built his own studio up there, smalled it the Sanctuary." "The Sanctuary," Alex repeated, a thrill running through them. It sounded perfect. "It's a tough hike," Maya warned. "Trails are barely there anymore, and if he was a recluse, his cabin might be hard to find, even if it's still standing." She paused, then looked at Alex with a glint in her eye. "But a secret Elvis heavy metal album?" That's a story I gotta hear more of. You going to try and find it? I have to, Alex said, determination hardening their voice. It feels important, like it needs to be found, even if it's just to prove it existed. Maya nodded slowly. All right, I know these mountains better than anyone. And I've got a feeling about this. It's too wild to be completely made up, she grinned. Besides, if Elvis really did play some heavy metal, I gotta hear it. Maybe it'll inspire a new song or two. Alex felt a wave of relief and gratitude. Having Maya, a local with a deep understanding of the mountains and a genuine passion for music, was an incredible stroke of luck. It wasn't just Alex on this crazy quest anymore. They had an ally. We'll need supplies, a good map, and maybe a few days, Maya said, already planning. The weather can turn fast up there. We'll start tomorrow morning. Meet me here, bright and early. As Alex left the diner, the mountains loomed in the distance, no longer just a daunting obstacle, but a promise. With Maya's help, the mythical hammer of Memphis felt closer than ever. The hidden studio, the sanctuary awaited. The next morning, Alex met Maya at the Lost Creek Diner. Maya was ready, dressed in sturdy hiking gear, a large backpack, and a serious-looking compass. Alex, though prepared, felt a touch of nerves. This wasn't just a casual stroll. They were heading into the wilderness, chasing a ghost. The drive from Greenbrier was rough, taking them off paved roads and onto winding dirt tracks. Eventually, Maya parked her old truck near a barely visible trailhead, deep within the national park boundaries. From here on, it's on foot, she announced, hoisting her pack. Trail disappears pretty quickly. We'll be relying on my grandpa's old maps and a bit of instinct. The hike began. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Sunlight dappled through the dense canopy of trees, creating shifting patterns on the forest floor. Maya, agile and knowledgeable, led the way, pointing out old animal trails and subtle changes in the terrain that Alex would have missed. Hours passed. The climb grew steeper, the air thinner. Alex felt their muscles ache, but the thought of what they might find kept them pushing forward. Maya, meanwhile, occasionally hummed old folk tunes, her voice surprisingly powerful even in the quiet woods. Why do you think Sparky Finch came all the way out here? Alex panted during a brief water break. Maya shrugged. Some people just need peace, I guess, or maybe he wanted to protect something, a secret perhaps. She looked up at the towering trees. The mountains are good at keeping secrets. They've been holding on to them for centuries. As they ascended, the whispers of the wind began to materialize, a faint, ethereal sound that seemed to hum through the trees. That's Whisper Peak, Maya said, pointing to a distinctive, slightly flattened summit emerging from the dense forest ahead. The sound of the wind through those particular pines. It's like a low, continuous melody. They pushed on, following what Maya believed was an old, overgrown logging path. The path grew fainter, almost disappearing into the undergrowth. Just as Alex was starting to feel discouraged, Maya stopped dead. "Hold on," she whispered, her eyes scanning the dense foliage. "I think I see something." Partially hidden by thick vines and overgrown bushes, a rusted metal gate sagged on broken hinges. Beyond it, a faint, almost invisible track led deeper into the woods. "This has to be it," Maya breathed. Sparky Finch was known for his love of privacy. They pushed through the gate, the rusty hinges groaning in protest. The track led them further, twisting and turning until, through a clearing, a small, weathered cabin emerged. It was built of dark timber, blending almost perfectly into its surroundings, and looked like it hadn't seen human presence in decades. The windows were boarded up and the porch was covered in a thick layer of pine needles. "The sanctuary," Alex whispered, a wave of awe washing over them. It looked exactly like a place where someone would hide a profound secret. As they approached, a strange feeling washed over Alex. Not fear, but a sense of reverence, of stepping into a sacred space. He could almost feel the presence of Sparky Finch, and perhaps even Elvis himself. Lingering in the quiet air, Maya carefully tried the front door. It was locked, but the wood was rotting around the frame. With a determined push, it creaked open, revealing a dark, musty interior. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light, filtering through the gaps in the boarded windows. The air inside was still and heavy, smelling of old wood, damp earth, and something metallic like ancient electronics. The cabin was small, with one main room and what looked like a small bedroom. In the main room, in the center, was a large, imposing console. It was old, clearly, custom-built with an array of knobs, faders, and meters that looked complex even to Alex's modern eye. Dust covered everything. Like a blanket, this was the sanctuary. Sparky Finch's personal studio. Maya went to the windows, pulling off the rotting boards, letting in more light. Alex, meanwhile, carefully approached the console. It was clearly a mixing board, but designed for specific, perhaps experimental purposes. There were signs of custom, modifications, extra inputs, and strange unlabeled switches. On a workbench next to the console beneath a tarp, they found a reel-to-reel tape machine. It was a professional model, heavy and sturdy, but just as dusty as everything else. Next to it, a stack of blank magnetic tapes still in their original boxes sat untouched. He was still working on stuff up here, Maya observed, running a hand over the console. Or at least he was prepared to. Alex's gaze swept across the room, searching. No tapes marked Elvis, no obvious clues. Then tucked away on a shelf beneath the workbench, almost hidden by some old equipment manuals, Alex spotted a small wooden box, intricately carved, much like the music box Pops Malone had shown them. It was slightly larger with a simple latch. Inside, nestled on a faded velvet lining, was not a tape, but a thick leather-bound journal. Its cover was worn, the pages slightly yellowed, and on the first page, written in elegant script, were the words, "Notes for the Hammer of Memphis Jafe." Alex looked at Maya, their eyes wide with disbelief and triumph. "We found it," they whispered. Not the tapes, but the notes, Sparky Finch's journal. This was more than just a confirmation. It was a deeper connection to the myth. The journal would tell them the story from the perspective of the man who saved the music. The truth was finally within reach. With the journal in hand, Alex and Maya decided to set up camp inside the cabin. The late afternoon sun was beginning to slant through the newly uncovered windows, illuminating the dust motes like tiny stars. They cleared a small space, careful not to disturb the old equipment, and Alex began to read. The journal was meticulously kept. Jimmy Sparky Finch was not just an engineer. He was an artist in his own right, passionate about sound, and respectful of the musicians. He worked with the entries were dated starting in late 1967, October session today. Novice, but not our Elvis. He came in with a couple of Nashville Wildcats, a guitarist named Slash, though that can't be his real name, and a bassist, Big Bill, and a stack of tunes. Dark Primal, he's calling it the Hammer of Memphis. I'm calling it insane and brilliant. Alex looked up at Maya, who was leaning over their shoulder, equally engrossed. Slash and Big Bill, Maya mused. So it wasn't just Elvis. He had a band. It makes sense. Heavy music needs that kind of synergy. Alex nodded, returning to the journal. Sparky detailed the recording process, describing how Elvis pushed the boundaries, demanding more distortion, heavier drums, a rawer sound than anything RCA had ever heard. He's shedding the layers, becoming someone else. His lyrics, they're not about love or heartbreak. They're about anger, frustration, feeling trapped. He sang one line today, "This gilded cage is gonna break tonight," with so much fury it gave me chills. I think this music is his therapy, a way to scream without breaking character in public. The journal entries spoke of the secrecy surrounding the sessions. Only a handful of people were allowed in the studio. They worked late nights, Elvis often arriving disguised, wearing thick glasses and a baseball cap. The whole project was a deeply personal, almost desperate attempt by Elvis to express a side of himself that was being stifled by his career. October 25th, 1967. The last track is done. It's less aggressive than the others, but even more intense. It's Elvis at his most vulnerable, yet still powerful. I honestly believe this is the greatest work he's ever done. It's pure, unfiltered. If the world ever heard this, they'd realize what a true artist he was, not just a commodity. Then came the entry. Alex had been dreading, but also hoping, for October 28, 1967. Disaster. The Colonel found out. Someone must have talked. He stormed in, red-faced, screaming about contracts, image, blasphemy. He called the music garbage and destructive, demanded all tapes be surrendered for destruction. I argued, tried to reason with him. This was art, but he didn't care. Made a single raw copy of the masters, just a stereo mixdown. Hid it away. It's not perfect, but it's enough. It's proof. I'll keep it safe until the day if ever the world is ready to hear the real Elvis, or until I decide it's safe. It's my secret now, and Elvis's. The hammer of Memphis will live on, even if only in the shadows. I'm thinking of taking a long break, head to the mountains. Need to clear my head, keep this secret safe. Alex looked at Maya, a triumphant grin spreading across their face. He made a copy. He saved it. Maya's eyes were wide. He risked everything for this. He truly believed in Elvis, the artist. They continued reading. Sparky's later entries describing his move to the cabin building, the sanctuary, and his hope that one day the truth would emerge. He never explicitly stated where he put the tape, but he hinted at a place where it would be safe, closer to the source of its power. The very last entry, dated just a few years before Sparky's passing, was poignant. April 12, 20X. Getting older now, the cabin is peaceful, the secret is still safe. If she ever finds this journal, she'll know Lisa, Alex murmured. Sparky's daughter. Boomer mentioned her. If anyone knows where he hid the tape, it would be her, or maybe he left a clue for her. The journal had not only confirmed the myth, but had deepened it, transforming it from a wild rumor into a heart-breaking testament to an artist's desperate need for expression. It also revealed a deeper, more personal reason for its secrecy. It wasn't just about commercial viability. It was about Elvis's raw, emotional state, a vulnerability he couldn't afford to show the world. As dusk settled, casting long shadows across the sanctuary, Alex closed the journal. The tape was somewhere in this cabin. It had to be. Sparky had built this place to protect it. They just needed to find its final hiding spot. The search was far from over, but the journal had ignited a new fire in Alex. They weren't just looking for a secret album anymore. They were looking for a piece of Elvis's soul. The next morning, armed with the journal's knowledge, Alex and Maya meticulously searched the sanctuary. They went through every drawer, every shelf, every crevice. The cabin was small, but Sparky Finch had been a master of hiding things. The journal hinted at a place closer to the source of its power, a phrase that puzzled them. They checked behind the console, under the floorboards, even in the small, dusty bedroom. Nothing. Maybe it's not actually in the cabin, Maya suggested, frustrated. Maybe he meant symbolically, like near the peak or in a natural feature. Alex reread the last entry in the journal. My only regret is that I never showed it to Lisa. She wouldn't understand. Not yet, but maybe one day, if she ever finds this journal, she'll know. He said, if she ever finds this journal, she'll know. Alex mused. That implies the journal itself is the key, or contains the final clue. They flipped through the journal again, looking for anything out of place. A pressed flower, a hidden note, a diagram. Then, on one of the blank pages at the very back, almost invisible, unless held at the right angle, Alex noticed faint indentations. It looked like something had been pressed hard onto the page, leaving a ghost impression. They held it up to the light. It wasn't writing. It looked like a series of small, almost imperceptible dots and dashes. Morse code? Maya wondered, leaning closer. Alex pulled out their phone quickly, searching for a Morse code translator. They painstakingly traced the dots and dashes, comparing them to the code. A few moments later, the message began to form. Below THE, Heartwood. Below the Heartwood, Alex repeated, puzzled. What does that mean? Maya looked around the cabin, her gaze settling on a large, intricately carved wooden chest in the corner of the bedroom. It was old dark wood, clearly handmade, with a deeply carved heart shape on its lid. The heartwood, she whispered, pointing to the chest, and it's old, probably made from the heartwood of a tree. They rushed to the chest. It was heavy, its lid secured by a sturdy, old-fashioned lock. It's locked, Alex said, disappointed. Sparky wouldn't have left the key somewhere obvious, Maya said, her eyes darting around. She noticed a small ornamental key hanging from a nail above the bedroom doorway, almost completely hidden by a hanging tapestry. Bingo! The key fit. With a click, the lock sprung open. Inside, on top of some old blankets and yellowed letters, lay a simple, unadorned reel-to-reel tape. It was old but looked intact. No label, no writing, just the magnetic tape. Aleka's left it out. They set the tape gently on the workbench next to the reel-to-reel player, but before they could even think about playing it, they found something else beneath the tape in the chest. A small, faded photograph. It was a picture of a younger Sparky Finch, standing next to a smiling woman and a little girl. And on the back, in Sparky's hand, was written, Lisa, my greatest joy. The picture sparked an idea. Maya, if Lisa is still alive, maybe she knows something more, and she deserves to know what her father protected. Maya nodded. He left that clue specifically for her in the journal. He wanted her to find it. They decided to find Lisa before playing the tape. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about a family legacy, a father's secret, and a daughter who might finally understand her recluse father's life's work. Using Sparky's full name and Lisa's first name, Maya, with her local connections, managed to track down a Lisa Finch living a few towns over. In a small, quiet community, she was in her late 50s, now a retired schoolteacher. Nervous but determined, Alex and Maya drove to Lisa's house. She was initially wary, a quiet woman with kind eyes that held a hint of sadness. When Alex mentioned her father, Sparky Finch, her expression softened, then became guarded. My father was an unusual man, Lisa said, inviting them onto her porch. He lived up in those mountains for decades. Most people thought he was a bit crazy. Alex gently explained their discovery, showing her the journal and the photograph of her and her father. Lisa's eyes welled up when she saw the picture. He kept this, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I always thought he pushed me away when he moved to the cabin. I didn't understand his passion for music. He just disappeared into his studio. Then Alex explained about the Hammer of Memphis, about Elvis and the secret sessions, and how her father had risked everything to save a copy of the tape, believing it was Elvis's true artistry. Lisa listened, her expression changing from sadness to astonishment, and then to a profound understanding. He never talked about it, not to me. I thought he was just obsessed with his machines. She took the journal, carefully turning the pages, reading Sparky's entries, especially the last one. Tears streamed down her face. He wanted me to know. He wanted me to understand. He hid a tape in a chest inside the cabin, Alex said gently. We think it's the Hammer of Memphis. We haven't listened to it yet. We wanted you to be here. It's your father's legacy, and part of Elvis's. Lisa looked at the tape, then at Alex and Maya. Her eyes filled with a mixture of grief, awe, and a newfound pride in her father. My father was a quiet man, but he believed in truth and in art. If he thought this was important enough to risk everything, then it is. Let's listen together. The journey had brought them to this moment, to the quiet porch of Sparky Finch's daughter, on the cusp of an unimaginable discovery. The myth was no longer just a rumor. It was a shared inheritance. The drive back to the sanctuary was filled with a quiet, palpable anticipation. Lisa sat in the back, clutching her father's journal, occasionally wiping away tears. For her, this wasn't just about a secret Elvis album. It was about understanding her father's solitary life, his deep conviction, and the love he had for true music. Back at the cabin, the air crackled with unspoken excitement. Maya carefully threaded the old tape onto the reel-to-reel player. The machine hummed to life, a low mechanical whirring. Adding to the tension, Alex, Maya, and Lisa gathered around, holding their breath. This was it, the moment of truth. Maya pressed the play button. Then a low, distorted guitar, riff thick and powerful, unlike any Elvis recording Alex had ever heard. It was raw, bluesy, but undeniably heavy, with a driving rhythm. Section that hit like a hammer. The drums were thunderous, the bass a menacing rumble. It was a Gokul's Elvis, but not the Elvis of the movie soundtracks, or even the '68 comeback special. This was a different Elvis. His voice was raw, untamed, full of a fierce energy that was almost frightening. He wasn't just singing, he was roaring, growling, pushing his vocal cords to their absolute limit. The lyrics, just as Sparky's journal had described, were filled with frustration, anger, and a desperate yearning for freedom. The first song, Midnight Howl, was a furious blues rock explosion. Elvis's voice soared over the distorted guitars, a primal scream that echoed to the small cabin. It was powerful, unsettling, and undeniably brilliant. Alex felt chills run down their spine. This wasn't just heavy metal. It was a genre-bending masterpiece, decades ahead of its time. Lisa had tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of awe. "My father," she whispered. "He told me he lived by his ears. He truly believed in this sound." Maya was nodding along her foot, tapping her eyes wide with a musician's appreciation. The guitar work is incredible, and that bass. They were ahead of their time, absolutely. No wonder Parker buried this. The album flowed paid, each track building on the last. Chains of Gold was a blistering anthem of defiance, followed by Burning Desire, a track so intense it felt like the very air in the cabin vibrated with Elvis's passion. There were moments of blistering guitar solos, thunderous drum fills, and Elvis's voice shifting from a guttural growl to a soulful, soaring wail, crowning his incredible range and emotional depth. As Symphony of the Soul, the final track began. The intensity softened slightly, but the emotional impact deepened. It was a powerful, almost mournful ballad, still heavy but with an aching vulnerability. Elvis's voice was raw, heartfelt, laying bare a soul in turmoil. The lyrics spoke of the burdens of fame, the loneliness and the struggle to remain true to oneself. It was profoundly moving. When the last note faded and the tape hissed softly to a stop, the cabin was silent. No one spoke for a long moment, the weight of what they had just heard hanging in the air. Alex felt a lump in their throat. This wasn't just a discovery, it was an experience. It was a window into the soul of Elvis Presley, an artist desperate to break free from his gilded cage. The myth wasn't just true, it was more profound than anyone could have imagined. "It's magnificent," Alex finally managed to whisper, their voice hoarse. "It's him, the real him." Maya wiped a tear from her eye. "It's a masterpiece. It changes everything we thought we knew about him. He was truly fearless." Lisa, now composed, gently took the tape from the machine. "My father knew. He knew the world wasn't ready then. He protected it, not just for Elvis, but for the truth." She looked at Alex and Maya, her gaze firm. "What do we do now? It's too important to just sit on a shelf." The question hung in the air. They had found the mythical album. They had heard The King Unleashed. But what was their responsibility now? To release it to the world, shattering the carefully constructed image of Elvis, or to honor the secrecy that had surrounded it for so long, and the wishes of those who had kept it safe? The weight of the decision pressed down on them. They held a piece of history, a raw, powerful truth that could redefine a legend. The days following the discovery of the Hammer of Memphis were a blur of intense discussions in the sanctuary. Alex, Maya, and Lisa wrestled with the profound ethical dilemma of what to do with the tape. "This is Elvis Presley," Alex argued, pacing the small cabin. "The king. This album would rewrite history. It shows his incredible range, his hidden depth. It would prove he was so much more than the image it needs to be heard." Maya, the pragmatist, nodded. "Musically, it's revolutionary. It's a missing link in rock history. Imagine the impact. It would blow people's minds, and it would bring a new generation to his music." But Lisa, carrying the weight of her father's legacy and Elvis's personal struggle, saw it differently. "My father protected this for decades. Elvis himself wanted it kept secret. He poured his pain and his anger into these songs because he couldn't express them. It was his private scream. Is it right for us to suddenly, after all these years, expose that raw vulnerability to the world?" "Sparky left the journal for you to find, and the clue for the tape," Alex countered. "He wanted the truth to come out. Eventually he wrote, 'Until the day if ever the world is ready to hear the real Elvis.'" "And what if the world isn't ready?" Lisa asked gently. "Or what if his family, his legacy, isn't ready for this kind of upheaval? It could be seen as disrespecting his memory, revealing something deeply personal he chose to hide." The arguments went back and forth. On one hand, the world deserved to know the true artistic breadth of Elvis Presley. It was a revelation, a testament to his creative spirit, a powerful, groundbreaking piece of music. On the other hand, it felt like an invasion of privacy, unearthing a vulnerability he had sought to bury. "Think about Colonel Parker," Maya suggested. "He buried it to protect his investment, his image of Elvis, not to protect Elvis's true self. This album is a testament to Elvis, breaking free from that control, even if for a short time." "My father's journal also mentioned that he didn't want to show it to me because I wouldn't understand, not yet," Lisa said, holding the journal to her chest. "Perhaps he was waiting for the right moment or the right people, and perhaps that moment is now, and those people are us. What if we don't just release it commercially? What if we approach his estate or his family? First explain what we found and let them decide it's still his legacy. After all," Lisa considered this, "that's a respectful approach. But what if they say no? What if they want to keep it buried just like Parker did?" "Then we rethink," Alex said firmly. "But we have to try that first. It's the right thing to do. And regardless of what happens, we know the truth. And we can tell the story of Sparky Finch, the engineer who saved it, and Boomer Jones, who remembered it." The idea of involving Elvis's surviving family members, particularly his daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, who had always been protective of her father's legacy, felt like a crucial step. It was respectful, and it offered a path forward that didn't just feel like a reckless unveiling. They spent the next 2 days preparing their case. Alex drafted a detailed summary of their journey, including excerpts from Sparky's journal and Boomer Jones's account. Maya created a small, high-quality digital copy of the tape, just enough to share a short, tantalizing snippet as proof, but not the full album. Lisa wrote a heartfelt letter explaining her father's role and his deep respect for Elvis. They decided to send a discreet, carefully worded letter to Graceland addressed to the estate and Lisa Marie directly. They knew it might be dismissed as another fan's wild theory, or worse, ignored entirely, but they had to try. The tape, The Hammer of Memphis, was carefully packed back into the wooden chest, along with Sparky's journal. It was a powerful, dangerous, yet beautiful secret. As Alex left the sanctuary with Maya and Lisa, heading back to civilization, they felt a profound sense of closure, but also a burgeoning sense of responsibility. They had found the myth, listened to its truth, and now faced the challenge of its unveiling. The heartwarming part wasn't just the music itself, but the journey, the connections forged, and the quiet dignity of Sparky Finch, who had believed in an artist's raw, hidden soul. The future of the Hammer of Memphis was uncertain, but its existence was now undeniable, and that in itself was a victory. Weeks turned into months. The letter sent to Graceland seemed to vanish into the vast machinery of Elvis's estate. No reply. Alex felt a surge of disappointment, but not surprise. It was a long shot. Maybe they just thought we were cranks, Maya suggested, trying to be optimistic. Or maybe it got lost in the mail. Lisa, however, held onto a quiet hope. My father always said, "Truth finds its way sometimes. It just takes time." Alex returned to their regular life, but nothing felt the same. The open mic nights felt smaller. The music Alex played tinged with a secret knowledge of the Hammer. They shared the story, the full, incredible story, with Pops Malone. Pops listened, his usual grumble replaced by a thoughtful silence. "So, the Hammer of Memphis," he said eventually, a rare smile gracing his lips. "Always knew there was more to that fella. He had fire, real fire." He looked at Alex. "What now, kid? You gonna sit on it?" Alex shook their head. "No, but I can't just leak it. It feels wrong after everything Sparky did to protect it, and how personal it was for Elvis." Then, almost 6 months after sending the initial letter, a package arrived at Alex's apartment. It was a plain, unmarked box, sent via express courier. Inside, a single, elegant letter on thick stationery, embossed with the Graceland seal. It was from the Elvis Presley estate, and it was an invitation. Private meeting in Memphis with a representative of the estate and a member of the Presley family. They requested Alex, Maya, and Lisa bring the materials they mentioned in their letter. A nervous excitement filled the air. This was it. The meeting took place in a discreet office building away from the main Graceland tourist hub. The estate representative, a stern but polite woman named M.S. Davies, was accompanied by a quiet, dignified man in his early 60s, whose eyes held a striking resemblance to Elvis's. He introduced himself as Jim, a distant cousin who had worked closely with the family on various projects. Lisa Marie was unable to attend personally, but had read their letter with great interest. Alex, Maya, and Lisa recounted their journey from the newspaper scrap to the encounter with Boomer Jones to finding Sparky Finch's cabin and the journal. They spoke of the deep personal meaning of the album for Elvis and Sparky's selfless act of preservation. Then, with trembling hands, Alex carefully placed the old tape in Sparky's journal on the polished conference table. Jim listened intently, his expression unreadable. And as Davies, initially skeptical, began to show signs of genuine intrigue as Lisa spoke of her father's dedication. Finally, Maya played the short digital snippet they had prepared. The opening minute of Midnight Howl. The room fell silent as the raw, distorted guitar riff filled the air, followed by the thunderous drums, and finally Elvis's untamed, powerful voice. Jim's eyes widened, a flicker of emotion passing through them. Miss Davies sat bolt upright, a look of utter astonishment on her face. When the snippet ended, silence descended again. Jim cleared his throat, his voice a little shaky. "My goodness, I've heard rumors, whispers, but never believed it. That's truly him. That's a side of him I never knew. My cousin Elvis, he had so much passion, so much more than the world saw. This is unprecedented, a complete reevaluation of his artistic journey. The historical implications are enormous." She looked at Alex, then at Lisa. "Why did you come to us? You could have just released it." "My father believed in protecting Elvis's truth. This was his private pain, his personal rebellion. We felt it was important to honor that, to let his family decide how this truth should be shared, or if it should be at all." Jim rose from his seat, walking over to the table and gently touching the old tape. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for respecting him, for respecting my cousin, for finding this and for bringing it to us. It means more than you know." The estate did not immediately decide to release the Hammer of Memphis commercially. It was too raw, too potentially disruptive to the carefully managed image of Elvis. But they did decide something else. They organized a small private listening session for a select group of music historians, critics, and trusted members of the Presley family. It was a quiet, reverent affair held in a private studio in Nashville. Alex, Maya, and Lisa were invited, honored guests. The album was played in its entirety. The reactions were profound. Tears, gasps, and ultimately a shared understanding of a greater, more complex Elvis. The hammer of Memphis remained a private truth, a myth for the masses, but a cherished reality for those few who understood its significance. It was a secret kept, but shared in a way that honored the artist and the man. Alex continued to play at the Blue Hound, their music now imbued with a deeper sense of purpose and connection. They knew the secret of the hammer, not just as a piece of music, but as a journey of discovery, friendship, and the quiet power of honoring truth. Maya continued, her music inspired by the untamed spirit of Elvis in the mountains. And Lisa, for the first time, truly understood and appreciated her father's life, his silent sacrifice, and his deep, unwavering belief in the power of music. The myth of Elvis's secret heavy metal album lived on in whispers and obscure forum posts. But for Alex, Maya, and Lisa, it was no longer a myth. It was a heartwarming testament to the King's untold story, a legacy preserved in the shadows, and a reminder that true artistry knows no bounds, even when hidden from the world.